So I was looking at the videos that I first made when I made this channel or began this channel, and one of those was a reason that I became a pastor. And I was looking at the edits, and it was not, the edits were terrible, especially for the audio. But I've been in ministry for 3 years now, and so I want to take this time and do 3 things that I've learned being in 3 years of full-time ministry. So here we go. Number 1 is that for some reason the title of pastor or being a pastor, it carries some type of prestige or some type of thing with it where people, once they hear that you're a pastor, they start acting differently. When I first came to this community, I was trying to find ways to get connected with the community, and I enjoy playing sports. And I was driving by the park one of the days, and I saw some kids playing basketball, some teens, and I was like, oh, I'll go shoot some hoops with them. And this is before anybody in town really knew who I was, and so I was shooting hoops with them, and they were acting normal, like they do normally, and part of that was, you know, dropping the F-bomb every 3rd word or whatever, you know what I mean. But it was funny because a couple weeks later I had my first youth outreach event for our church, and they came. It was like a pool party and a pizza party after that. They came and they saw that I was the pastor in town, and then you could kind of like see the realization come upon them as they realized that I was a pastor, and that a couple weeks before they're acting like that. But that's just the case that 8 times out of 10 people, they change the way they act. And for me, I always laugh at it because when you think about it, I'm not the one that's going to be judging them at the end times. It's going to be God that's judging them, and so it doesn't matter what I think of them really, but it does matter what God thinks of them. And God, He sees the way they act at any point of the day. And so for them changing up the way they act around a pastor, for me, it's kind of silly. I find it kind of silly. I would much rather them just act like they normally do. In fact, I try not to tell people what I do for my job so that I can get that honest character, how they are honestly, instead of them trying to change who they are just because I'm a pastor. So that's one thing I've learned in my ministry. And the second thing I've learned is that you can't make everybody happy. In a congregation, you have many different people, and they have many different ways of life. They've all experienced different life events that have shaped them in different ways. They've handled it in one way or another, and it all comes to that point where you meet them, and then when you interact with them, it's who they are. But with that, they all come with their own opinions of how things should be done, whether that's the message on what subjects you should preach, or the ministries of the church, or the finances, or whatever it is. And you can't make everybody happy, because even if you find something that makes the majority of people happy, there'll always be like that 1 or 2 that are upset by it going that way. An example for this for me is preaching a message back in the election with Trump and Hillary. I was preaching a message on how it's important that no matter who gets elected, whether you like them or not, they need our prayers. You know, the Bible tells us in Romans that the government was established by God, and we know that God can guide those, we've seen it in the Bible, who don't even serve Him. And He can use them to glorify His kingdom. And so we need to pray that will happen for our government. That's what I was saying in that message. But we had a couple in the congregation who thought that I was pushing the other side from the way that they were going to vote. It was pretty obvious which way they were going to vote, and they got pretty upset about it, and ended up hurting my relationship with them because of that misunderstanding. And they when they come to church, it's not as often that they come to church now because of that. And for me, what I've learned is that it's not my job to make my congregation or the community happy. It's my job to make God happy. And there will be a lot of times where following God's will won't make everybody in the congregation or the community happy. But if I'm making God happy, that's all that matters. And I think that message is a prime example, because I prayed over what I was supposed to preach, especially around that time, and that's what I felt that was needed, was prayer for whoever gets elected as our president. And so that's number 2. You can't make everybody happy. just work on making God happy, and that's all you need to do. And number 3 is that you wear many hats. And I kind of knew this coming into ministry, that you wouldn't just be preaching on a Sunday morning, but you'd be doing a lot of things. For me, coming here already, I've had to learn how to change fluorescent lights into LED lights. I've had to put up speakers. I've had to patch holes in the wall that our youth ministry have put in the church wall. I'm a snow mover, our church snow mover. Sometimes I do janitorial work in the church when it's needed, and it's more than just preaching. You know, you got the times where you go out and you're visiting people, you're counseling them through the losses of loved ones, or like premarital counseling and stuff like that. And so you're not just preaching on a Sunday morning, and you have to be ready for that. You have to remember that whatever church you go to as a pastor, you're there, and community really, you're there to be a servant. And you're there to be a servant to them, and that might mean a lot of things, not just preaching on a Sunday morning. And so those are some of the things that I've learned in my 3 years of full-time ministry. I know I'm not a professional at this. I know I'm going to learn a lot more, that there are a lot more experiences that I haven't gone through yet myself as a senior pastor, and they will come. And I've learned more than those 3 things too, but those are just a little insight of what pastoral ministry is like, and what I've learned from it. And so yeah, with that, be blessed.